The Electric Utility Board will come to order in open session.
Council will reconvene in open session.
I would remind everybody you've got your microphones to touch the touch button, touch the on button, and you don't have to pick that up or move it. Just it's sensitive enough to pick up your voice. So once you touch the button, then it should be able to record your comments. Coming into open session, and we don't have anybody signed up for public comment on item 6. So with item 7, that's discuss and take action regarding a resolution accepting the Lubbock Power and Light annual financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2014, and I would ask Mr. Burcham to take over from there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Item 7 is a resolution for the board's acceptance of the LP&L annual financial report. You've all been provided a copy of that, a hard copy, and I think we also sent you Okay. Sorry about that. You've all been provided a hard copy of the report, as well as we've sent you an online version of it earlier before the weekend, give you a chance to look at it. First of all, we do believe that the data in the report is accurate in all material respects, and it's presented in a manner that fairly sets forth the financial position and results for LP&L for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2014. We also believe that the disclosures necessary to enable a reader to gain an understanding of our financial condition has also been provided. The financials have been audited by BKD, which is a firm of licensed certified public accountants, and they're also the same firm who provides the audit for the city. And the goal in the last bullet there is to provide a reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. The report itself is broken down into 5 sections. The first one on page 3 of the document is the independent auditor's report, or the opinion, and BKD is here today. I'll introduce Kevin in a moment. Page 5 is the beginning of the MD&A, or the management's discussion and analysis, and what that is, it's basically a narrative explanation through the eyes of management at LP&L how we performed, financial condition, and some forward-looking statements. On page 19 of the document are the financial statements themselves, which includes statements of net position or a balance sheet. It also includes the statement of revenues, expenses, and change in net position, also known as an income statement, and also cash flows. On page 23 of the document is what we call notes to the financial statements, which are really required disclosures and additional information to help the reader understand a little bit more of the details in the document. And then finally, on page 45 are required supplementary information, which includes some retirement and other post-employment benefit information at the utility. Again, like I mentioned a moment ago, we have been audited by BKD. Kevin Kemp, who's a partner with BKD, is here today. We had the city has a good-sized team at the city offices, and we had between 3 and 4 at LP&L for about a week, and then we've had lots of dialogue back and forth by phone and email throughout, really, from November, December, January, a little bit in February. So I'll turn it over to Kevin right now for his part of the presentation.
Thanks, Andy. I'll promise to be real brief because Andy did a really good job. We did meet with the audit committee last Friday via phone and went over our required communication with the governing board, governing body, and answered their questions. Some of the highlights that we discussed is obviously the only thing that is ours in this long document is our opinion, and our opinion basically is an unmodified or clean opinion. Like Andy said, we did our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and based on our audit, we believe these financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So we did do a comprehensive look at internal controls. We found no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report. to the audit committee or to the board. You know, it was just an overall good year financially for LP&L. I think you finished with a net increase in net position of about 4.45 million, which is consistent with the 4.66 million from the previous year. Like I usually say, and Andy brought this up, is the management discussion analysis. That is a really good tool to spend, you know, 10 or 15 minutes looking at it as opposed to all 45 pages to kind of get an understanding of how the current year compared to the two previous years. And it also gives some information to the readers about the capital asset activity you have going on at the utility, as well as your debt issuances that you had in the past, things of that nature. So it's a good quick read that hits the highlights. The one thing that we are pointing out to everywhere we go is GASB, our Government Accounting Standards Board, loves to issue new standards. The one that is coming down the pipe that will affect you all next year is GASB 68. And in a nutshell, Andy alluded to page 45 a few minutes ago. The new standard requires the unfunded accrued actuarial liability related to your pension plan to be recorded in full. In the past, you only had to record the portion that wasn't the actually required contribution that wasn't being made, and the only thing that wasn't being made was a little bit of a lag due to some actuarial information not getting to you all timely. So you'll see that LP&L's portion as of 2013 was $18.3 million. You've had a piece of that already recorded. I think it's about $2 million, but that will hit your balance sheet next year, or this coming up year, 2015. That is going to affect all governments that have a defined benefit pension plan. Some of them it will hit very significantly. It will take their unrestricted net position or undesignated equity into a negative position. Y'all will not have that, but I did want to point that out. And the other thing that's coming is not effective yet, but you'll also have to record a portion of your OPEB liability probably 2 or 3 years down the road. Again, you've been recording a piece of that. You'll see that as of October 1st, the city's unfunded liability is $155 million. Y'all will receive a portion of that. That allocation is yet to be determined. Will it be based on your employees, the total employees, salaries, the total salaries, or some other type of methodology? But that's out there. The underwriters have been aware of this. These disclosures on page 45 has been in the financial statements since probably 8 to 10 years. So they know it's out there. We've been told that it's not going to affect their assessment of governments going forward. But you know, it could trigger some comments from the various communities. So I just wanted to point that out. Other than that, great job to Andy and Chad and their team. They got us in, got us out. Reports dated early February, and most governments usually don't get these out until end of March. So be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Chair, I've got a comment.
Mr. Mayor?
2 years ago, I was involved in a very public discussion with the board chair about the definition of a clean audit and what was and what wasn't an unqualified clean audit. I want to publicly thank Andy and your staff, and you, David, and everybody that you've put together. Hearing that we've got 0 material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Now, 2 years ago, we couldn't say that, and we had some serious issues. But I just applaud the effort of staff, not only for what you've done in turning the financial reporting around, but in the relationship that you've rebuilt with the City of Lubbock staff. So I just wanted to say thank you publicly. Since 2 years ago, I was willing to criticize publicly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other comments? I guess, Mr. Isom, as chair of our finance committee, I would ask you to.
Glad to make the motion to approve the AFR, the annual financial report for LP&L.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Conrad seconds, and the chair will recognize that the three of us were in attendance. Mr. Conrad, Mr. Eisman, and I were in attendance at the Finance Committee that reviewed the draft of the financial statement. So, and had questions and comments for our auditors then. So, very good job on all parts of all parties. So, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The audit report is approved. Danny.
Thank you all very much. And I just would be remiss in not mentioning this, but I did, and this last slide has thanks to a lot of folks, particularly Chad, who put in an enormous amount of hours, and then Tammy Swack, who works at LP&L, also put a lot of time in this, and then the folks at the city accounting department, Pam Moon, Brack Bullock, Linda Cuellar, Veronica Valdraz, Deborah Hansard, Kevin Rule, and Cheryl Brock. They were all very instrumental in helping us put this together. Lots of hours. They spent a lot of hours on the city side, but they also assisted us on the LP&L side. So the mayor thanked us, and I want to turn around and show some thanks to some very important people in our organization. So.
Very good. Thank you. That would bring us then to item number 8, presentation on downtown redevelopment activities, including status of underground utility location and relocation activities, an update on progress and future of downtown redevelopment, and the attraction and retention of residential and commercial parties to the downtown area, collectively the downtown project. And I think
We're going to have a team approach, and I'm not sure who's going first. Eduardo, who's going first? Yes. You going first?
All right, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to make the presentation on the Lubbock Downtown Redevelopment Project, specifically LP&L's role. But before we begin, I'd like to first thank the LP&L engineering staff for helping me put together a presentation, first of all, and secondly for coordinating our guest speaker this afternoon. And again, I'd like to, Mr. McDougall, I'd like for you to go first, sir. But I'd like to take this opportunity also to thank you for graciously accepting the invitation and making time for us this afternoon. So,
Thank you very much.
he'll give a brief overview on the downtown redevelopment and then our presentation.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you concerning the downtown redevelopment project. And I'm really going to kick off by starting at in the Overton project and kind of give you some numbers so you can maybe relate a little bit to what the expectation would be downtown. The Overton project is about 99% complete. We like, and you'll laugh when I tell you this, we like 2 big projects totaling in excess of $200 million. One of them just started. It's a 720-bed project. It's just right off of Avenue R. The other one is a 1,600-bed. That's just south of Walmart, and that's the last 2 big tracks that we had. Those have closed. One has started, and one was waiting to ACC. It was the buyer, and they were waiting to see what the enrollment was at Texas Tech for this year. So they will be moving forward with their project during the course of 2015. It'll take about 2 years to complete. But once that is done, you will be the number in Overton will be something north of $800 million of new projects. And trust me, they all have electricity. So it's a big deal for downtown. It's a big deal for Lubbock in general. To give you a little better feeling for it, during the course of the 2013, the numbers on the tax rolls had gone from 26 million for the entire 325 acres to 400 million that has actually made it on the rolls. Generally, those will lag at least a year, sometimes 2 years, depending on their completion of their projects. So, with that being said, and moving, that is what causes us to move forward and go past Avenue Q, and especially the 5 areas that we're working on now, which is phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is all north of Broadway, and then we will be coming back, picking up everything that there, and then going back to our single-family housing, which would be close to Prosperity Bank, and starting to move forward downtown. There's 2 projects that we're in the process of working on now. One of them is about a $35 million project. It would be a housing project. And then you've got 3 new hotels that will be starting on Avenue Q, all fairly quickly. One at Glenna Goodacre and Avenue Q, and that will be a Best Western. Then on 10th, Main and Avenue Q, there will be a Holiday Inn Express that's going in there, and we are awaiting the final approval from the Holiday Inn Corporation to give approval to start that project. And the third one will be right off of 5th and Avenue Q. That's, you would probably know it, it's a vacated property now as the Radisson. And the city manager reminded me that he stayed there one time and it was a Sheridan. And I said, yeah. And before that, it was a Hilton.
That's right.
So, and now it's empty. So the good news is that there will be a project starting there. The owners say by spring, which is not that far away, that will most likely be a DoubleTree. So you will have 3 new hotels right along Avenue Q that pushes everything into downtown. And that's the reason that we made a movement from Zone 5 to Zone 4 to try to get that completed so we could keep everybody keep that thing moving across Avenue Q. Now the early reports on downtown was that it would be about at the end of the day would be about a $1.1 billion projects going on. Quite honestly, that's probably somewhat light, but it's still a big number, and to make all of this happen downtown. Besides the hotels, some things that we're working on for 2015 is the gateways into downtown. We hope to have at least 3 of those gateways done by the end of 2015. One will be at the entry of Marcia Sharp, and it will be on what we know as Glenna Goodacre Boulevard. And then the next one that will mirror that one would be at 19th Street, there by LISD, coming in on Avenue Q down to Broadway. The third project will be at Glenna Goodacre, and the entry over across Avenue Q, and will be a memorial as such that will serve as a gateway into downtown as well. And I mentioned the other one. I said Glenna Goodacre. It will be back on the north side of Glenna Goodacre, but it will be flanked on the south by Glenna Goodacre. So you're going to have three new hotels, and with the things that we've got going on downtown, you should start to see some real activity going on during the course of 2015. The issue with all that is utilities. And obviously, we can't move ahead of utilities just because of the mass that's there. And but if we can get in place what is being talked about yet today, is that we could get all of that done and let at one time, and excuse me, and get more than one contractor that would be coming in to do that, we would hasten the construction of downtown by at least 10 years. And you stop and think about that. That's a pretty good movement forward. And we're with the conversations that have gone on in the last couple of weeks. I would hope that we're getting very close to that possibility. That would really bring downtown into the limelight, just as we did with the as we did with the Overton project. Now, even though a lot of these, if you went along Fifth Street and Mac Davis, with the Arts Center, with the Baseball Hall of Fame, with the community health center, just those three projects alone will mirror in excess of $200 million in construction just along that street. That doesn't include the hotels that's going in. Now, the downside to that is those three are not taxable. But can you imagine what would happen if those projects, when those projects got started, of the restaurants, hotels, housing, where it's single family, multifamily, townhomes, and this type would go in as part of that, and all of a sudden downtown, and I didn't mention the shopping centers that would go in place. A lot of those would be underneath an apartment, would be retail, an apartment on the top, as the ones that like we did, McDougal family did on Overton, with the center at Overton Park and the suites at Overton Park. So it would mirror those type properties, which in saying that, we've got developers standing ready to start construction once they know that the utilities are out of the way and that it's truly going to get done. That's when, because they want to buy shovel ready to start. And so I've got several of them lined up. I use 9 major companies across the country that developed the Overton project. The McDougals only did 2. The rest of them were done by basically out of state and out of city large developers. And you'll see the same thing happen here. As a matter of fact, a lot of them will be the same people, and we're already involved in that, and they're just waiting for us to get locations ready to build on. But and then if you've already seen one, the Pioneer Hotel is the restaurant is open and doing extremely well. If you hadn't been there, it's a very nice facility. We've got 4 floors open and basically leased up, and we'll be finalizing the rest of those floors over the course of 2015. But that will give you, and the time that I have here, I won't take any more, but to give you the real ideal and a summary is that the key to all of this is utilities. No question about it. It's got to go underground before we get there. That's what happened in Overton, and of course we had the luxury there of everything was tore down. So it made it easy for the city to come in and put their utilities in, and their utilities were 100 years old. You got the same situation downtown, except you're going to have super blocks because you're not going to tear down nearly all of the structures in downtown. So you got to work around them, and that's okay. And that will also help us move because of the caliber of the ones that are staying and the ones that'll be here. So it's it's exciting, and I think and that if you looked at everything today, all we lack is getting the 3 hotels moving on Avenue Q, and then we jump over to the downtown redevelopment project. And I would see that phase 2 is under construction as we speak. And hopefully we're going to move that right into phase 3. And while we're doing that, we can do phase 4 because we'll be backing up to Avenue Q. And then phase 5 is the Arts District. And from there, we move south to the housing areas that will come in with the next phases. And all those phases will be outlined over the course of the next few months and certainly during 2015. But hopefully that will give you some idea of what's going on downtown and what the possibilities are downtown, because it will happen, and we just need to pick up some steam and get everything done and ready for the builders to come in. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Are there any other questions? Do we have any questions for Delbert?
We can either ask questions now or wait till the end.
Okay, well, we'll just wait till the end. That's fine. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. McDougall, thank you again for the great overview of the project. It certainly has a lot of potential. Again, we'll do our part in getting our utilities where they need to go. Again, we put together a presentation for this project. Again, this is mainly to cover LP&L's role in the whole project. So currently there are 5 phases to the project. Phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Really the main goal here is to get duct banks down Avenue O, Avenue M, J, and then for phase 4 and 5 it's still to be determined. These duct banks are where that's where we're going to basically centralize all the utilities and go underground. So an overview of the presentation, we want to go over really what parties are involved and their current role in the projects, phase 1, 2, and 3 of the project, how LP&L is being proactive in helping facilitate this redevelopment, and then also the project appropriations. All right, so again, the McDougall Company is the master developer. City of Lubbock is working with those guys. SGS Engineering is a designer of the duct banks, and they also coordinate with the city, the contractors, and especially other utilities, so we get the right duct bank going. Deerwood is actually the contractor that has awarded the contract for phase 2. And then there's the utilities, and I'm just going to cover LP&L's again. LP&L, we're looking to relocate all of our existing overhead facilities to the underground duct banks, and at the same time keep everybody energized and with power, so that's pretty challenging. So phase 1, LP&L's main priorities in phase 1 were to relocate an existing feeder line. Actually, we had probably 4 feeder lines in that phase 1 area that we needed to relocate, but the main one was relocating McKenzie 15-9 and going down in the duct bank along Avenue O. And the second objective was to remove all of our overhead facilities in the target area, and I can show you the target area in the next slide. We put a couple of pictures in here just to kind of give you a view of what went on phase one. The picture on the left shows you the duct bank that SGS designed. You can see the conduit there. The red ones on the left are the electric, and then the other ones on the right are going to be the rest of the utilities. That green box there is a switching cabinet. We're going to see a couple of switching cabinets in the next few slides, and they're really depicted with red squares, so just keep that in mind. Again, once we start relocating all these utilities, it's going to be important that we install power in a section before we actually rip out the old equipment, so it's going to be important that we install a set switching cabinets and transformers to make that transition. Like Mr. McDougall said earlier, it's going to be an especially difficult challenge in this scenario since we don't get to basically tear down the whole block and start from scratch and provide power to the people as they build. So we have to make accommodations beforehand before switching them over. Phase one was completed in 2014. Again, our two objectives were to run the new feeder line down O, and again, that's in place and it's operating. LP&L, we also took down all of our overhead facilities in the target block area. That block area is there. It's basically a parking lot and then a couple of businesses just directly west of the existing Wells Fargo building. We removed all of our facilities except the poles, since there's still telecommunication still on the poles, so we couldn't remove them. So, yes, sir.
Mr. Isom?
Eduardo, when you say telecommunications still on the poles, can you explain that a little bit more?
The big NTS or Suddenlink cables that are currently attached to the poles. Some of those companies have not moved, so
They haven't put theirs on the ground?
they're still attached to our poles, so we can't
Do you
do
know
it.
what their status or what their timing would be?
Jared, he's more the subject matter expert down there than.
My understanding, I don't really know NTS's status right now. Suddenlink, I believe that is on their next to-do list. They just relocated their utilities in the Overton area for the latest apartment complex that's going in that Mr. McDougall was talking about. So I think they're kind of turning the corner to get ready to do that job to relocate their utilities. But NTS, I really don't know, honestly. So.
Are those the only two utilities that are?
Yes, AT&T is out of the way, and we're out of the way. It's just Suddenlink and NTS right now.
Thank you, Jared. All right, so again, our two main objectives for the phase one already went over. Other accomplishments that we were able to take care of, we've been able to clear at least 90% of the old XL 4160 volt overhead facilities. These were the facilities that we purchased back in 2010. We were also able to reroute and remove the existing 23 kV, 15 and 4 kV feeder circuits. Again, I think I mentioned earlier, but there were at least 4 feeder circuits going through phase one. We relocated one of those circuits to go down Avenue O, and I believe we went ahead and just rerouted and even put underground some of the existing 23 kV. So again, we went and removed that since it was already in the plan. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, the picture you have here is like Main Street, Broadway, and I forget, is that 13th?
I think
on
I
the
can't
bottom of
remember.
the picture?
This is the Wells Fargo building.
No,
This may
that's
be-
Avenue O. That's west of the Wells Fargo building. That's the parking lot. And then
That's
Right.
O and Q, and I'm not sure what street
So-
that is.
but my question is, phase one included more than that. right?
Correct. But
Okay.
this was just a target area for
Okay.
removing all of the overhead facilities.
Okay, all right.
So we got that.
Eduardo or Jared, what is have NTS and Suddenly agreed to any kind of time as far as LP&L funding future phases before they've done phase one? Is there a agreed upon timing or?
Honestly, nothing I know of. I know there was a letter sent out back in, I want to say it was May of 2013, that requested all utilities be vacated by that time. We
Right.
met that deadline, but the others did not, obviously. So I don't know if they have any kind of timeline they're working under right now. I do know there has been a request come through the city to close the alley running north-south and east-west through that parking lot up to the existing United Way and Cashman House.
So would we do phase two before they finish phase one?
It's quite possible.
Yeah, we're going ahead with the schedule as far as doing or putting our utilities underground. I think it'd be up to the city at that point to go forward. I mean, it's really, we're not the pushers of the project. I mean, we're just complying with what the city's doing, so. I'm really anticipating that the city's gonna have a presentation next month, from what I understand. So,
No, I think we need to find out at this point from legal, at what point can we demand that their lines be taken down or give them a drop dead date that the poles are coming down with or without their lines. And that's our next step, is to find out that information.
They have been, both of them, you've got two deals there on phase one. Really, you've got a half dozen poles that are back to the, right to the west. They have had their equipment on order, for some time. We meet with them consistently. They're generally at all of our TIF board meetings. So we've got a pretty good handle on where they are. That all should go with just the, NTS and suddenly, those all should go away, I'm gonna say during the first half of 2015. Now, if we got a project started that we're looking at there, they would have to hasten that, considerably. But they really don't like that much being done. And each one of them has only got one line on those poles. So it's gonna be very easy to do that, but they've got to get their equipment in and get that done. And it's been a while to get the equipment in, but, they tell us that, in each meeting that they're quote practically there. And I stay in touch with them, on a weekly basis, so.
thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I know that quite a few trees came down in phase one. Is there any plan to replace any of those or to,
Again,
Do
our
any of that?
job is only to put our underground or overhead lines underground. That'd be more of a question for the city, I believe.
No, they are not scheduled to be replaced. There's some that were replaced that we took out. For the most part, that will be up for when those certain areas get redeveloped.
Why would we be the first ones to bury our lines?
You're more compliant.
Very well put. More compliant. I mean, we've done a lot that we can to get the other two utilities to come off. We've forcefully sent letters, we've
Yeah.
taken to the board. There's excuses. Obviously, they have business on all parts of town that they're trying to deal with customers as well. LP&L was the first one to be completed in phase one. We appreciate that, but there's only so many times we can ask before it becomes a legal issue.
All right? Okay, continuing on. Phase two, that is scheduled to begin this year, and I believe it already began. I think they've started staging conduits. I'm not sure where the contractor is at. Again, the main project here is for the contractor to install a duct system down Avenue M from approximately 9th Street, which would be north of where that slide starts, down to around 15th or 16th Street. LP&L would essentially install 5 switches, pad-mounted switches, as depicted on these squares. The red squares are going to be the 5 that are anticipated at this time, with the bottom one being blue, which is future. Depending on if a business comes in and they need power right then and there, we can go ahead and extend that portion. So if following this blue line, this has been completed as of phase 1. So as soon as the duct bank is in place and we can get our wire in, we could essentially go in and put in our cable and energize that and make it available. Alright, so phase 2, we wanted to put in a slide here just to represent some of the duct banks that SGS had designed. Again, I guess one of the more complex ones is this duct bank. I know it's hard to tell on the color, but if you remember from the previous slide, there was a bunch of different colored conduits that sat on top. These would be them. LP&L would be on one side and buried a little bit deeper. I think 48 inches is the minimum. So that's at least 48 and even more. And then actually there's room for the gas, which is always on the other side of the duct from us. So we just thought we'd throw that in there just for your information. Again, this is 10th and Avenue M. Again, the contractor would start around 9th Street and M and work their way south.
And when's that going to start?
I believe they had
They've already started?
They've received some of the conduits.
And that's
hopefully to get phase 3 involved as part of phase 2.
and that's moving down from Avenue M from 9th down to
15th or
16th. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let me clarify a little bit. The construction of phase 2, along with the construction phase services inspection with phase 2 and the design of phase 3 was awarded at City Council in December. Notice proceeds given to the contractor in March of 15. So
Okay.
although they've delivered some pipe, you'll see a bunch of the rainbow pipe, we call it, and each utility has its own color. It's being delivered downtown, but the contract has not technically started until next month.
Okay.
And then it's a 12-month contract.
Very good.
Concrete encased or concrete barrier? It's concrete encased. Actually a 2-sack soft concrete.
Did you say the city council awarded phase 3? No.
Design of phase 3.
Just the design.
All right, well, thank you for that clarification. All right, so phase 2, from phase 2 we go to phase 3 again. It's planned for 2016. The route and the switch locations for that is essentially down Avenue J. It looks like we would start 6th Street and go all the way down to 15th. Again, the red squares here represent the switches that we would install. Again, phase 2, I believe, would be this one, and then we already have conduit and some existing feeder lines in these blue manholes here. So it'd be a matter of just connecting those to the new duct system. So that is planned for 2016. Again, another point of the presentation is just to show that LP&L is being proactive. We've actively been rebuilding and reconductoring overhead feeder lines up into the downtown area and also into the Overton area. One of the main lines would be 18th, would be along 18th Street coming west from east of the interstate, which would be Co-op 1. That is one of the main backup feeds that is available to us for that downtown area. Again, the XL 4160 volt circuit conversion, that is a project that really it started here. You know, this project here gave us a great opportunity to begin that. So we literally went alley by alley and started converting customers, and they were absorbed into the 15 kV LP&L system. Again, we've removed approximately 90% of that 4160 in the downtown area. With the removal of all of that 4160, that has also allowed us to decommission City Substation, which is at 10th Street and Avenue M. So that substation is de-energized and out of service. All right, so this is going to be a work in progress. We're looking to remove all of our overhead facilities and go along with the plan. The picture on the left up there just shows you a reconductor job that these guys were doing along, I think it's Broadway?
Along 18th Street.
On 18th Street, and then on the right side is just a crew removing some of the 4160 kV or 4.1 kV facilities. So in all realities, it is a work in progress that started in 2012, and we're just going along with these guys. And we look forward to coordinating going forward. So last but not least, the appropriations for our capital improvement project. So the project started actually in 2012. So in 2011, we appropriated 425 for the first part of the phase 1. 2012, 290,000. 2013, 280,000. At the beginning of this fiscal year, it looks like we put another $1 million in there. The balance as of today in that account is 1.267 million. And then this coming fiscal year, that's projected that we put in there 510,000. So those are the appropriations for that account. Now I'll open it up to any questions or any more questions.
Any questions?
Anybody else?
Mr. Isaac?
What have we approved so far?
Financially,
So far, I think it's 1.995 million, close to 2.
Just under 2 million,
Yeah.
I believe.
So we're hanging in there.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody that helped me with the presentation. And
Thank you,
that's it.
Eduardo.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to item 9. Discuss availability, cost, speed, and other issues regarding present broadband service related to the downtown project, and take minuted action instructing staff to prepare an estimate of any increased cost that would be incurred related to installation of fiber along with other underground utility infrastructure. Mr. Dunn?
Mr. Chairman, this was an item I placed on the agenda, and basically the purpose of this is, since LP&L is already putting the utilities underground all over downtown, we're missing a big opportunity, in my opinion, to provide broadband fiber optic cable at the same time. It'll do 3 things if we can go back and on phase 1 pull fiber optic cable into phase 1 and then bury it with the electricity in phase 2, 3, 4, 5. And what that will do, it will address an infrastructure need that we have at the city that's not really being addressed as far as our internet capabilities are. And you'll see in the slides, I've compared what the private sector is giving us versus what we need to be competitive in the future. The second thing it would do would be a marketing tool for LP&L to be able to allow the the businesses in downtown Lubbock to have an exclusive right to provide 1 gig power, which is 1,000 megabytes of bandwidth. Nobody else in the city has anything close to that, and you'll see that in just a second. And it would be a huge draw for apartments, residences, businesses, but more importantly, for high-tech businesses. We're losing our STEM majors from Lubbock, the science, technology, engineering, and math majors, because we don't have the infrastructure to keep them here. This will provide that tool, and it will also be a profit center for LP&L. So this is what our current broadband in the city is. The average speed is 2 megabytes upload per second. Download speed is not all that important. That's what everybody always talks about. And that's 19.7 megabytes per second, which is significantly slower than the rest of Texas has. And it's slower than the US average. And what that does to us is it gives us a disadvantage when we compete in the marketplace to keep STEM majors, because they need the upload speed. These are the fiber providers that serve Lubbock. Suddenlink has 84% of the coverage of Lubbock. AT&T has 83% of Lubbock coverage. NTS is difficult to get data on, but after this slide was made, I managed to find out they have, excuse me, my voice is going, they have 34% of the city covered. Level 3 is a specialty provider, and you're going to see in a moment what they provide. And they're really the only high-speed internet provider in the entire city. Suddenlink and AT&T and NTS call themselves high-speed providers, but they're not. This is what Suddenlink will provide you. If you want a data cap, which is significantly low, that nobody ever can afford to have because they go over it the first day they have it, you pay $35 a month. Most businesses have number 2, which is 2 megabytes upload and 12 megabytes download. And that's, I didn't put the figure for how much monthly, but it's about $230 a month, which is pretty expensive for that service. If you want, and that's with no data cap. If you want 8 megabytes upload and 50 megabytes download, you pay $350. Now, Suddenlink will advertise that they provide 100 download speed. I don't know what their upload speed is. I haven't found it anywhere in downtown Lubbock. In fact, I've seen them even advertise 150 download. And again, download speed is not that important to attract the people we want to attract. And here's why. When you're starting a business, if you're a computer science major and you have an idea for Uber, you have your business plan, all you need is a fast computer, some software, and a cloud server, and you can write that software, and you can put the bones together for that business. The problem is you have to upload massive amounts of data in order to create a product that anybody's going to want to buy. And so when you've got 8 megabytes per second upload versus 1,000 megabytes per second upload is what the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee offers. It's like traveling to Dallas in my car at 8 miles an hour and traveling in the mayor's car, that Porsche drives, at 1,000 miles an hour. So if you're a businessman and you've got your goods, whose car do you want to be in? You want to be in the mayor's car. AT&T, they have UVerse, which is not really true fiber, but those are their figures. As you can see, the upload speeds are very, very slow. NTS, again, I could not find data on them, but I would suspect they're similar to Suddenlink as far as pricing and speed. This is level 3. They're business only, they don't provide residential service, and they don't serve much of Lubbock. They're a big national trunk carrier. They provide 100 megabytes per second upload at $2,000 a month. And that's your only true high-speed internet provider in the city. And there's no startup company, there's no, well, maybe Greg's company could afford it, but most people can't afford $2,000 a month for a relatively slow upload internet speed. This is what Chattanooga, Tennessee did. They started a municipally owned utility in 2008 to build a smart power grid. And what they did is they went and got $150 million of stimulus money in 2009 and expanded that to provide fiber to the homes and to the businesses. And they serve 57,000 homes and 5,000 businesses. And they provide what's called triple play service, which is television, telephone, and your internet. By law, we cannot provide telephone service. We're prohibited as a utility from providing that. It's not really the intention of LP&L to provide television service unless the board sees otherwise. But we can provide the 1,000 megabyte upload speeds and download speeds. They provide it at $7 a month. So you can see the tremendous economic advantage they have over people in Lubbock. That's basically my idea, is to see if the staff could find out what it would cost us to go back and run fiber in phase one through the conduit that's already there, and then add the fiber as we proceed through the different phases of the project. And that's basically the motion. Once that is done, the city's going to have to decide who's going to pay not only for the connections to the businesses, but also who's going to pay for the wiring to get it from what LP&L is doing. That's a city issue. The city's also going to have to give us authority to operate the internet system. We would have to contract with a trunk line carrier for the bandwidth. As you know, internet is basically, you're just connected to a server, and that server is connected to the rest of the world, and that's how it works. So once we get the fiber in the ground, the other issues will fall into place. I think it's a tremendous opportunity that we're missing out on, that we need to take advantage of since we are doing this anyway. Because the big cost is in the city's budget. They're paying for the conduit. LP&L, our cost center, is paying for moving the utilities, so it shouldn't be that big a deal. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Bell?
I'd like to see, Charlie, us next month have these major providers come in, and we could sell bleacher tickets and have you cross-examine them. I'm serious. I mean, I think there are a lot of questions need to be asked, because, you know, I get concerned about, you know, government competing with private industry. These other outfits probably got a big grant and all that sort of thing. I guess things rattling around in my head is, if there's a market there, why isn't it available? So I'm concerned that we use tax dollars to put something like this together. It may work. I'm not, you know, crossing it off the list, you know, out of hand. I just think it needs a lot more exploration. Legally, what can we do and what can't we do? It'd be great to have the service. I think it'd be great for downtown redevelopment if we had it, but who's paying for it? You know, will it pay for itself or not? And I'd like to explore it some more, but I'd certainly like to let the folks we talked about have their day in court, so to speak, and see what they have to offer.
Mr. Tucker?
Thank you, sir. To your point, Mr. Bell, the only thing that I would suggest is that the question he's asking is just how much it would cost to do it. And the nice thing is with all of the existing data that TxDOT uses whenever they go out for bid, it's all public knowledge anyway, and it probably wouldn't cost a whole lot to have staff sit down and come up with a cost estimate, and then we know whether or not to take it a step farther and either offer it to a third-party company or go down the legal means of having LP&L in the city take a look at it, the cost estimate probably doesn't cost us that much money.
I don't have any problem with it. I didn't even speak to that issue. I don't
Fair
have a
enough.
problem with looking at it at all. I think it should be
And,
explored.
Well,
go ahead, Don.
Mr. Bowe?
Well, I just think that's a good point, though. Charlie's not asking for us to, to do it on a serious nature now, but he wants to investigate and get some cost figures and everything else.
No problem.
And I can tell you this, the mere fact that we would be looking at such a thing might pique the interest of private concerns too, to upgrade and make a bigger investment.
As a practical aspect, I do not think that will happen. And the reason being, downtown Lubbock doesn't have the numbers at this point to justify them doing anything. Secondly, they're going to be like Jerry, they'll never do it because government never does anything and never gets anything done. That if we'd had that attitude in 1917, LP&L would not exist, because what happened is that the Malone brothers had the ice plant that was providing the ice and the electricity to Lubbock, and they sold it to Texas Utilities, and their plant immediately went out of business, and they were buying power from Plainview and sending it down here in 1917. You can imagine the reliability issues. And so the city people went to them and said, we want to deal with you, but you're going to have to reduce your costs. You're going to have to keep our lights on. Otherwise, we can't compete. Electricity is the future of attracting businesses. You're hurting us. And they said, sorry, we're the only game in town. We're not changing. And so they went back to the citizens and voted to start LP&L. And we compete, and did for 100 years almost, with private business. So the idea that we have to put our head in the sand because we're getting a poor service that's hurting us economically and hurting downtown Lubbock is just crazy. And I will ask, the only motion I have here is simply, let's see what it's going to cost. But eventually, Jerry, I'm going to tell you, we need to do this, and it's crazy not to do it.
I just think it needs more exploration is all, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I think cities have core competencies, water, sewer, a lot of core competencies. Right now, a core competency of our city is not this broadband internet. Maybe we can develop it. Maybe this is another, 1917 issue. I'm just saying, I think if we had another enterprise fund, we could probably find some way to add fees to it, like stormwater onto the internet. I'm being facetious, but I'm just always cautious about government getting into the business that's, into things available out there in the business sector. Doesn't mean it isn't a good idea. Doesn't mean we might do it one day. I would just not be in favor of doing it without a lot more information. That's all I'm saying. Let's understand what we'd be getting into and who'd be paying for it.
Well, and I believe the motion or the item here is basically to direct staff to determine cost, to give us cost estimates on that. So, Mr. Dunn, I'd ask for a motion.
I move that we ask staff to provide us an estimated cost of what it would take to pull fiber through phase 1 of the project, and then add fiber as we go along for phase 2 through 5 of the project.
Second that.
Second. Got a couple of seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I do have
All right, Mr. Assen.
Richard.
Mr.
Where is
Kasner.
Richard?
I'm still right here.
Oh, hey. Sorry.
I was trying to be invisible.
Is there any problem from your end with us doing this? Even taking into consideration that all we're doing is asking to look further into the issue?
No, sir, I don't think there's a problem as far as this step goes. Now, when and if the next step is taken towards actual provision of internet service, that probably does bump out of the jurisdiction of the UB.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, any other comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion?
I'm sorry, one
Mr.
more,
Bell?
a follow-up, I'm sorry. When you said outside the jurisdiction of LP&L, I assume you don't mean the city as a whole?
The EUB.
Right,
Yes, sir.
okay,
Yes, sir.
gotcha.
One,
Mr. Bowman?
will this motion give the city staff authority to go to outside sources for expertise on this?
To determine an
To
estimate of
determine the
cost.
cost.
Yeah,
Yes,
because,
certainly.
because they don't have the, probably the.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
just wanna be clear
Mr.
about
Eisen?
that.
You know, Charlie, I don't know that this may be a friendly amendment, may not be that friendly, but, I don't know why you would limit it to cost necessarily. Is there a reason why you're doing that?
I don't want to see if it's feasible.
Why don't we just then say, let's look at the feasibility of it, cause if we're gonna look at it, let's look at cost and legal, I mean, I'd like to look at the whole picture. I think, let's not limit it.
Well, okay, do you have a motion amendment, like
just
in
general
English?
feasibility.
To reword the
Put
motion
forward?
We don't have to look at it.
to study the feasibility.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. That just gives the staff
More
I'd
to
like
look
the
at.
legal side of it as well as the cost is what I'm saying.
Okay.
If you agree with that.
Yeah, I agree to that. That's not a problem.
And this may well be something that can be taken up in one of our subcommittees as another issue as well. So I'll just throw that in. But so the amendment would be to change the language to say allow staff to study the feasibility of.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion as amended, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, any opposed? All right, very good. That brings us to item 10. Consider resolution authorizing the Director of Electric Utilities to execute an amended Exhibit A to that certain professional services agreement dated September 6, 2011, by and between Lubbock Power and Light and Black and Veatch Corporation regarding studies related to capacity and energy supply services. And I believe that's going to be page 14, Mr. Bertram?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And basically what this is, as you know, we've had a contract since March of last year with Black and Veatch for the 2019 Energy and Capacity Services RFP. And we had previously authorized $1,125,000 of expense for that contract, and this amendment is asking for an additional $250,000, which would bring the total authorized amount to $1,375,000. Now, the $250,000 estimate would take us through probably the end of April. This is probably an extreme estimate of what those costs might be. I don't think that we will. I do not think we will reach that amount, but I wanted to get that authorization in place in case we do need it, in case there are different studies that result from any board direction or as we go forward through this process.
I move that we approve the amendment.
Motion's made. Second. Okay. Say Mr. Isom seconded. Okay. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 11, update and report by the Director of Electric Utilities regarding customer service, business center practices, procedures and policies, billing procedures, and LP&L staffing and performance. And the Director's report, I believe, starts on page 18. Mr. McCullough.
I thought I would start first with a report on the outage that we had recently, the airplane crashed into power lines and repairs. And Steve Combs got this information. We had several questions from the board about the costs and outage time, restoration, those sorts.
Good afternoon, everybody. We had, on the February 4th incident, we had 2,472 customers affected with the power outage. We had all but 4 back on by 12:30 the next morning. Then we had 2 more back on by 2:15 the next morning. The next day, we were not allowed into the area that the incident happened at until about 10:30. By 12:30, we had the last two customers back on. The the total labor cost was $162,057.04. The total equipment was $159,963.71. The total material was $11,505.20, with a total cost of $333,525.94. We only lost one pole and 7 cross arms, but most of the damage was the tower guy wires that just really played havoc on our transmission lines.
Mr. Iser?
Yes, we will file. We'll go through risk management and file an insurance claim. The status is still pending, but
I think it's appropriate that we recognize the job that staff did in getting that. I mean, that was a major. I mean, it was a catastrophe, obviously. It was a major project that you guys did within less than, well, I guess a little over 12 hours.
So the guy wires came down and just destroyed lines? Is that?
yeah, basically just wrapped around, in essence, two transmission lines. One that had initially been owned by LP&L, and one that was initially owned by XL. And then we had we had a hard time getting in there to get the clearance to get in there and start working. They let us in on the south side first, and we got one of the transmission lines back up, and then it wasn't until midday the next morning they let us back in on the north side.
Very good. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Call your attention to a few things here. On page 22, I know we got some board members that are very interested in our energy efficiency efforts, and we're trying to focus on that with some of our media. And so at the bottom of page 22, you can see some of the energy efficiency ads that are going to be running, some of which have already run. And we've got a couple of things on our website. We've got the powerful pointers, we've got the energy depot, and find savings all over your home pointers. So we are trying to emphasize that, and there's some more things that we're going to be doing down the road. The construction report distribution recap on page 24. Quite a few new businesses down at the bottom of that page from what we had on there last month. So there's still a lot happening on the commercial growth around town. I think really that's all I wanted to highlight. Any questions on any of the other material?
Very good. Any questions for Mr. McCullough on the CEO report? Very good information. Thank you, Mr. McCullough.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item 12, discuss financial and capital statements, financing options, audits, and financial policies of Lubbock Power and Light relating to debt issuance, issues, reserve account funding, cost allocation, and revenue and expense projections of Lubbock Power and Light. Mr. Bertram.
All right, good afternoon again. Before I get started, I wanted to make one introduction. We hired a new accountant this week, and actually Jerissa Jowers, if you would please stand up. Jerissa comes to us from, has been the CFO for Destiny Homes. It was a family business here in town, and prior to that she was with Dixon Hughes and Goodman, which is a certified public accountant firm in Dallas. It's the 16th largest in the country, and I think the largest in the southern United States, and so she worked there before Destiny Homes, and so now she's with us. We're very pleased to have Jerissa, so if y'all get a chance to meet her, we're very pleased because we just got through with all this audit, and we really are happy to have some help. So anyway, just wanted to make that introduction. I'll try to speed through this pretty quickly. I always want to start off with rate stabilization and kind of show where rates are. We are still at $94.71 for an average 1,000 kilowatt hour customer. And you can see in comparison where XL Energy is. This month, or for January, they were at 106 $12.62. So, basically about $12 cheaper under the LP&L process compared to Excel process. And if you did a comparison over the last 12 months, the difference would have been about $112 between a similar customer with Excel Energy compared to Lubbock Power and Light. Also, we continue to be the lowest in the state. CPS Energy is the next lowest, and we're about $1.77 difference for a monthly charge for 1,000 kilowatt hour customers. So, still very proud of that fact. This is a budget comparison through December. You can see that December was about 25% of the way through the through the fiscal year, and you can see we're about 18.3% on revenues, about 18.9% on expenses. We typically are a little bit below budget in the winter months, as we see larger expenses and larger revenues coming in during the summer. So this is pretty typical, no surprises there. The income statement, which I haven't been showing you an income statement on a monthly basis as we were going through the audit, but this would be the first income statement I've provided to you for this fiscal year. You can see charges for service, about $43.7 million compared to about $45.7 million last December. That's for the first 3 months. You can see about a $2 million decrease, and a large portion of that change really has to do with natural gas prices and resulting in purchase power costs are down. Last year, this same time, natural gas was about $4.43. Today, it's $2.85. So you can see a pretty good size reduction, and that pretty much drives that. On the operating expenses, we are up from this time last year, and the main driver there is in personal services. You'll see we've spent the expense booked has about $10.5 million compared to $5 million last year, and that has to do with that new GASB 68 that Kevin Kemp just mentioned. He mentioned that we're going to be adding that liability on the books for the retirement, the pension benefits, and we're adding that on a monthly basis. We took that addition about 1/12 at a time. So to date through December, we have expensed about $5.4 million in pension expenses. And let me explain on this next slide kind of how it's working. Currently, on the right-hand side, and this is looking at the fiscal year that we just closed. This is in the audit that you were just presented with. The annual pension cost, which basically is an actuarial determined amount of what LP&L should be contributing for current and future retirees. And then so that's $3.25 million was the actuarial determined amount. The contributions made during the year were $3.23 million. So we had an increase in our pension obligation of about $20,000. So what that does is our net pension obligation, which is the cumulative difference in those annual pension costs versus what we've contributed. So we had on our books a liability of about $2.2 million basically. So that's this last fiscal year. Going forward, we're going to have to record the entire amount of the unfunded actuarially accrued liability. And so you can see on the right-hand side, the actuarial accrued liability, which is the amount that has been actuarially determined that we need to that our expenses will be over time for our annuitants and our active members. It's about $116.5 million. The actuarial value of the assets, or the market value of those assets we have set aside in TMRS, Texas Municipal Retirement System, is about $92 million. So we're anticipating at the end of this fiscal year that we'd have an unfunded liability of about $23 million. And that's the amount that will show up on our books under the liabilities. And also, to get it on the books, it'll show up as an expense. It's not cash going out the door. It's just an accounting entry that will record that. So you will see $23 million of additional expense on that personal services line item, which includes personnel costs, benefits, and salaries. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all understood that. When you look at the financial statements, it'll look really funny this year because you'll see those really big expenses. We will have a net loss on the income statement this year as a result. Doesn't mean we lost money. It's just the way that we are now accounting for those pension liabilities. This next slide, there's a report put out by Standard & Poor's on their approach to how they're going to be viewing pension liabilities, and I just wanted to point out that, this has been a long time coming. This is no surprise. We have always disclosed this information, as Kevin Kemp mentioned in that supplementary section on our financials. So this is not new news. It's just a different way of recording it. And you can see that, they do recognize this as important, and they've been taking this into account. And on that last bullet, I guess you can see that, in our view, the changes to the pension liabilities are more likely to affect governments which have already factored a weak position into their funding status. Since we are with TMRS, TMRS is a well-funded pension. It's not in trouble like some of the other cities and governmental entities across the nation. So, really the good experience that we've had with the Texas Municipal Retirement System is already reflected in our ratings, and I don't anticipate any change. We will be meeting with the rating agencies beginning portion of March as we gear up for our annual bond issuance, so I'm sure this will be a topic, but we do not anticipate that will be any challenge there. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Andy, let me talk accounting speak for just a minute then.
Sure.
So basically the underfunded the liability at the end of calendar 2013 was 18.3 million.
Yes.
We don't make a prior period adjustment for that and put it in,
No,
take it against.
that is not required in this instance.
Okay.
Well, they will next year.
Yeah.
There will be a prior period adjustment, but in this year's that you just approved today, there was no impact there. It'll just be in this year. So
I
there'll be
get it. But then so we're scaling in the whole 23 million over this
yes
12 months.
So we're going to be booking about $1.8 million of expense a month to get that liability.
To get
on
to the
books.
23.
Yes, sir.
Not the difference between the 18 and the 23.
Well,
but the whole
okay.
23.
The 23 is what we expect the liability to be. We already have $2 million on the books, so it's really we're adding about $21 million on. And the reason it's 23 versus 18, which is in your book, is because the GASB also required a change in how and the actuarial assumptions that are used, and so that will increase our liability as a result of those actuarial changes. There was also like some different mortality tables that have now been put into place, so that's driven a lot of the change, and that increased our liability for this. What we're anticipating, that's not in concrete. That's just our current assumption of what those dollars will be.
But my point is we're impacting our statement of activities as we book in the whole amount rather than having some go back against fund balance of prior years.
Yeah, right. And at the end of this fiscal year, we will see obviously the offset on the balance sheet as our net position, an unrestricted net position. So today, where we're in the 56 million range or something like that, it'll be in the $30 million range for the unrestricted net position. And again, Kevin had mentioned there's a lot of governments that is actually causing that net position to go negative, and we're fortunate that we have a strong, stable basis that won't impact us that way.
Right. So, apologize for the accounting speak. But
good question. Thank you.
Do it again.
All right.
Any other questions on that topic? Just have a couple more slides to go.
Okay.
Every month we're continually monitoring our purchase power, and we are seeing some positive there. Our actual costs for purchase power are down. I mentioned that a moment ago in the slide, but you can see as we continue to track this, at this point in time we're anticipating about $3.5 million under budget, and that has mostly to be driven by those natural gas prices coming down. Also, I always want to bring up our purchase power recovery factor. We ran into difficulties in September when the Dowd underbilling impacted us. We had forecasted at that time we didn't think we needed to make any adjustments to the pass-through rate for purchase power, and that's still holding true. You can see we have gotten back within our balancing account boundaries, both in December and January. So at this point, we're about $3 million under collected. We want to be really at that kind of that gray line going midway through the chart there. So we're headed in the right direction, and also wanted to show our projections. We're actually looking like we're going to, by the end of the the non-summer or winter season, we think we'll be actually over that line, and a lot of that again has to do with the drop in natural gas prices. So we still comfortable with the idea that we didn't need to make any adjustment to the pass-through rate, and we're very pleased with that. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Last slide is just on the capital program. It's on page 38 of your agenda, back up the detail. But just wanted to point out we have about $75.5 million appropriated for 50 capital projects that are currently ongoing and underway. We have spent $25.5 million of that through the end of December, so we have about $50 million on hand. For the month of December, you can see where those expenditures occurred. Distribution transformers being the largest expense, a little over $1 million, followed by the installation of overhead and underground lines, a little less than $500,000, and then some smaller amounts, adding up to about $1.7 million that was spent during the month of December. So just an update there, and that's basically my presentation. If y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Randy? Guess not.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
No.
That will bring us to item 13. Consider a resolution approving and requesting the City Council to amend the fiscal year 2014-15 capital program to amend capital improvement projects I-8585 air switch replacement, that will be 1. 2, 92-341 overhead fault indicators. 3, 92-374 69 kV line rebuild, co-op to Slayton. 4, 92377 Brandon Station outage, medium term. 5, 8591 Massengale Station outage, medium term. And 6, 92-334 Massengale Station outage, long term. I believe that budget amendment is item 39 or page 39 in there. And Mr. Bertram, I'd let you address that one as well.
Sure. I mentioned a moment ago that we'll be issuing bonds in the near term. And so what we do every year is we, of course, the budget was put into play, or we calculated the capital program almost a year ago now. So what we do before we issue bonds is we like to revisit all those capital projects, make sure, are they on track? Are we still going to need funding in this fiscal year for these projects? And so this budget amendment, what it has done is we either have unspent bond proceeds that we would like to utilize. What we do is that once we close projects throughout the year, if they come in under budget, we will have remaining funds left over, and so we want to use those before we would issue any bonds. So we had a number of projects where we had outstanding bonds, and so we wanted to apply those bonds to these projects. There's about $400,000 that we had left over in projects that came in under budget. So what this amendment does is apply some of those unspent bond proceeds rather than issuing new bond proceeds, and then also reducing some appropriations because we have either delayed some projects or we just don't see that they're necessary any longer. On this chart here, you can see the projects that we are making a change to. The first 3 projects, air switch replacement, you can see we this year we were going to issue $100,000 in bonds for that project. We've reclassified that from 2015 bonds. We're going to now utilize some 09 and 10 bonds. Same thing for the next 2 projects where we have reduced the issuance of new bonds in exchange for using up the old bonds. The last 3 projects are projects that we do not feel are necessary at this time. There's already funding in those last 2 projects, but we didn't feel that we needed the additional funding on the Brandon and Massengale projects. So overall, we're reducing the amount of bonds that we would issue related to these projects by about $2.9 million. We're utilizing about $400,000 of old bonds, and so you have an amended budget of these 6 projects. Originally we're at a little over $7 million. Today they're going to be at about $4.6 million. So I just wanted to point that out. In addition to these items, the original intent was to issue about $20 million in bonds for our capital program. We've had this reduction of the $2.9 million. There are another 2 projects that are still very active, but we do not feel like the money will be spent this year, so we're not going to issue bonds. One of those is the mobile substation, is about $2.5 million, and the other is some land acquisition for substations, is about $2 million. So overall, instead of issuing $20.5 million, we intend to issue $13.2 million, which is good for the near term as far as our financials go. But just wanted to let you know that the council approved a resolution the other night to publish the notice of intent to issue these bonds, so that process has already begun. We will be meeting with the rating agencies in early March, and bonds at this point, I didn't bring the calendar with me, but it should be a late April to May timeframe when we'll go into the market and issue those bonds. So, any questions?
Very good. Very clear.
Thank you.
Excellent. So we do need to, Mr. Isom, I'm sorry.
I'll move that we accept the resolution stated.
Okay. Second by Mr. Boatman. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, very good. The next item is discuss and take minute action setting the date, time, and place of the March 2015 meeting of the Electric Utility Board. I originally placed this item on the agenda because the time for our next regular meeting will fall, I believe it's March 17th, and that's during spring break. And I will be at a meeting in Galveston at that time with my kids and family, and I suspected that some of you would also be with your kids and family in different places. So my idea was that we would take action to set the date of the regular meeting for next month at March the 24th, if there was no objection to that. Mr. Kastner, I'd let you. Is that appropriate action to take, or is that?
We could do that, or do it by motion, second vote.
Okay. Okay. Anybody? Yes, Mr. Tucker.
I don't think you can you?
No, sir.
No.
No, you can't do that. What do you propose? What time on the 24th are you proposing?
My original idea was just to move the date a week and maintain the same.
Motion, I don't mind making a motion.
Okay.
I'll move that our March meeting be scheduled for March 24th.
Okay. Is there a second by Mr. Dunn? Any discussion? Everybody else is okay with that? All right. If you're okay with that, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so our regular meeting for March will be on March the 24th at 2 o'clock unless we have other items. Now, the other issue there would be, I'm anticipating, and I think I can talk about this under this item, anticipating calling a special meeting on March the 9th to consider a contract that we need to get in before March the 12th concerning generation and unit-specific agreements. So, and Mr. Kastner, is there anything else I can say about that?
That should get it. We also may need to discuss a litigation matter as well.
Okay. So the idea would be just to have a special meeting on March the 9th. Okay?
What time?
We'll figure that out when we know what else is going to be involved. And the last item on the agenda, item 15, is our committee assignments. And I just made a copy. Mr. Kastner, I don't think I asked you to make copies of mine.
Not even sure I saved mine.
Okay, let me see if I got mine. Thought I had it. Yes. And this was just to update our you have a copy? Oh, okay. James. Our committee assignments, we've already had the Finance Committee meeting. I had asked Ms. Henry to serve on that, and Mr. Tucker to serve on the Technical Review Committee. I just want to make sure we updated that with, and it's not an action item, it's just suggested committee assignments and so forth. So basically, Ms. Hill would replace Mr. Abeda on the Human Resources Committee, and I was going to ask Ms. Hill to chair the Low Income Committee, which we already had Mr. Boatman and Mr. Isom and myself serving on that committee. So that's just for everybody's information. And of course, if you want to address a particular issue on any of those, I'd be happy to talk about that, and we can kind of go on from there. That brings us to the consent agenda. That's items 16, 17, and 18. Okay, very good.
Second.
Is there any discussion on those? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that completes our agenda, and we will be adjourned. Oh, and I got to sign all those resolutions.
Minutes first.
Well, Olivia's all over you.
Yeah. Oh, I was about to sign in your spot.
Yeah, we're gonna look at moving that to James. I've always been acting just because I prepare them.
Not really. I've got my desk set up.
All
I
these
need to
consent
get
items,
my
they were
stuff.
all
I need to do
approved.
that over
Okay.
the weekend.
We've got the resolution.
We
Well, in the Black and Beach one.
Yes, and there's an attachment. The Black and Beach has assignment A behind it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got 2 in their 30s and an A.
Okay. Doing some readjusting, huh?
Yes, I hope.
James, you got to sit in and sign too now.
This is exhibit
Don't run
A
off.
by B&B.
You want something?
It's attached.
Okay.
That's how